Hello, my name is Renae Leith-Manos. Welcome to this podcast, Where to From Here, featuring conversations about luxury travel and how it's changing in every pocket of the globe.
So today we're going to Croatia, and of course Croatia is a beautiful location in Europe, and I have been lucky enough to be there, but I haven't been to any of these hotels, so I'm very excited to welcome Zoran to the program to tell us all about it. How are you?
I'm very good. It's an early morning here, and it's a beautiful early autumn day behind me, and it's very good to be here, and very good to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Now, what happens in Croatia when autumn comes at this time of year? Because of course it's such a summer, idyllic, water destination. Do things shut down like they do in Greece, or what happens there?
Oh, very much so. It's part of the life cycle here. We go from 100% to zero very quickly, and this is what majority, to be very fair, majority of people love this. They actually talk when I'm talking here. I'm not talking necessarily about the hotel owners or hotel operators. I'm talking about people locally here. They love the idea that they have their winters, that they have their time to themselves. And for example, right now we are at the time of the year when majority of people are in the olive yards and picking their olives. The harvest, harvest just finished in September, so now we're in October. So right now everybody enjoys the number of tourists going down. But
Really?
with everything that has happened over the last 5 years, the distribution of the season is changing a lot. So a lot of people are looking to travel in the off season. So, but I would
Right.
say there is still a slight disconnect between what it is that the travelers would like and what it is that the people in those destinations where the travelers would like to travel to are ready to accommodate. So there is, especially at these shoulder months, sometimes it's a little bit like, well, but isn't the season over? Like it's our time to pick olives. So
Yeah, so do the hotels actually shut down? And if so, what dates generally do they do that? Or you're saying it's just very fluid at the moment?
with our hotel company, we have 5 hotels. It's all on the same island in Northern Adriatic. One hotel stays open year round. 4 hotels close anytime in October, from early to end of October, and then they reopen all in March. And this is actually quite a long season compared to the south of Southern Adriatic. Dalmatian islands generally work from May 1st, perhaps April 15th to October 1st. So they even have a shorter season. I mean, we are in the Northern Adriatic, so we are much more accessible by car. So people from Austria, Southern Germany, Switzerland, and then other Central Eastern European countries can drive here.
Wow.
When you are talking about destinations that are more dependent on the flight schedule, then the flights really peter off kind of like already mid-September, late September. It's becoming really difficult to find flights without having
Yeah,
a
makes
connection.
sense.
And
Sense.
these days,
And
people prefer,
hang on, when Croatia is at its
yeah.
peak, where's everybody coming from?
So 15th of July to 15th of August, August is that like peak of the summer. Um, Still, the number one guests to come to Croatia are from Germany in terms of share volume, and German-speaking countries. I mean, you have to understand that Austria, for example, doesn't have a closer sea than the Adriatic Sea. Neither Switzerland or Hungary or a whole host of other countries, Slovakia, Czech Republic. I mean, they all come down south because we
They're
are
all
their
close.
closest sea.
They're relatively close. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
relatively close. And then we have really a growing number of guests from United States, from UK. The long haul destinations were growing really fast pre-COVID, and they are recovering right now. I mean, I remember in 2019 we had a lot of Aussies.
Yes.
Not as much. I don't think the numbers are back let's see at the end of this season when they do the when they add up all the statistics. But I don't think we will have as many Australians yet as we've had in 2019.
Do
But we were
Asians,
very
do some
popular with the
Asians
Asians.
come to Croatia?
So Chinese don't. Japanese were big in again pre-COVID. Koreans, but again, it's a very slow to recover. Those markets
Yeah,
are still slow to recover.
it takes time. So tell us about Losinj Hotels and what are they like and why are people coming to your hotel specifically?
So like I said, we are in the northern Adriatic, and we are what we call an outer island. So that means we are not too close to the mainland. We from between us and Italy, there is nothing but an open sea. And the island has been recognized already in the 19th century as the healthiest spot in Austro-Hungarian Empire. Back then, this was part of the Austrian Empire from early 19th century to 1914, 1916, middle of the First World War, thereabouts. So, and the rich aristocracy from Vienna was looking for a spot where they could spend their winters. And you can just understand how different thinking was back then. They were not
Yeah.
looking for a summer destinations because Vienna was nice in the summer as well. However, in the winter it would be cold and damp, and a lot of kids had issues with pulmonary issues, asthmas and even tuberculosis. Or so they said, where is the spot in the empire where we could spend winters, have mild winters, and that have healing benefits for us and our kids? And the smart people of Austrian Empire in end of 19th century did a survey of the entire empire, and it was large, sprawling empire. They figured out that this island, due to its micro location, an incredibly warm seas, the way that the Adriatic kind of goes alongside the Eastern Adriatic and then does like a turn in the Bay of Venice. So all the warm water gets stuck here, but then we are a little bit more north, where the cooler air comes from the Alps, and because we can almost see Alps and Dolomites from our islands. So just for the listeners and to kind of grasp where we are at. So you have this situation where the temperatures and the air temperatures in the winter are pretty much the same. And the sea is quite rich in plankton, which is unusual in the Mediterranean. And then the island itself has the largest biodiversity of any island in Mediterranean. We have 1,200 different plants, of which 250 are medicinal plants. So when you put all these things into
Yeah.
one package, you have this incredibly healing air due to the medicinal plants releasing all their oils into the air, and then you have the island covered completely in tall pine trees that act as a canopy that blocks all of this in the air. And then you have the warm sea that evaporates because often it's warmer than the outside temperature. So
And hang on, this is a
even
winter
today,
thing. All of this is in winter. That's what you're saying.
exactly. This is all in winter. This is all in fall, winter, and spring. So here we actually have a we have a proof that if you spend 2 weeks on our island, your lung capacity will increase by about 10%. So you
During
don't need to
winter.
do anything. You
During
just need to be
winter.
outside during winter. Exactly. So the effects of this go down in summer
Summer.
because the heat kind of kills off the benefits.
That's amazing. So
So
if I come there for 2 weeks, I can increase my lung capacity, which of course would help anything, any condition that you have, whether you need to
yes,
heal or whether you're
yes.
sick, it would be. So do you find that now, I mean, obviously historically this has happened. What's happening now in winter? Because you're in autumn now. Because you said you keep one of your hotels open. Is it for this purpose, for people to come seeking health?
Yeah, yeah. So it is our, we call it a vitality hotel. So, or vitality hotel. So we have there an element of sports where we have our tennis academy, and then there is a spa and wellness facilities, and then everything that we put together in terms of physio programs and some programs for the lung recovery. There is actually a hospital here on the island dedicated to those type of recoveries. So
Brilliant.
yeah, so as the time has gone, yeah, as the time has gone by, the type of travel, the what it is that people are looking for has changed, but this is
Yes.
coming back in a big fashion because people
Oh,
are realizing that there is very few things more important than health, and then when you can be in a place that heals by itself. So there are, naturally healing properties of this place. And then
how
today we
fantastic.
operate here 5 hotels. Yeah, it's here, so it's quite unique. And I
That
don't
is
really
so.
like using the word unique, but this is something that actually applies. The word unique here applies.
Yeah, because I mean, we started our conversation talking about the seasons and about the peak of summer, but now you've brought a whole new angle to it, that wellness in winter. And of course, wellness is something we talk
Yeah.
about a lot on this show. Many of our viewers, they love going to health retreats. We've featured Ananda in the Himalayas, but they can come to you, particularly for lung problems or breathing problems. Sounds fantastic.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, when you're talking about Nanda in the Himalayas, for example, they also to an extent use their healing properties of the location, but then they build a lot of programs on top of that.
Yes,
What we do here is similar. We don't have our traditional medicine in that way, like they have with Ayurveda or what the
yes,
Chinese have with the traditional Chinese medicine, but we have also our herbal remedies, and then you have the whole aspect of healing properties of the island, and then we roll out our 1 week, 2 week, 3 week programs, whether it's a microbiome improvement or improvement, so we call it Immuno week or microbiome week, where we don't want to make it too restrictive. People still like to imagine if you have only 2 weeks of holiday a year, you might not want to go on a super super restrictive diet and a super
I
super
understand that.
restrictive regimen. So we're trying to make it so that people can still have perhaps that glass of wine, but enjoy enjoy all the benefits that the island and our hotels and our programs provide.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about is anti-aging, big time, big time.
Yeah, do you think you see I'm 75, you see my skin.
I knew it. I knew it. People talk about Greece, it's Croatia. That's where the anti-aging is. But tell me, I love it,
Exactly.
Zoran. Your title is a transformation officer. What does that mean? I've never come across that title in luxury hotels ever.
Yeah. So actually, to rewind slightly back, I am kind of an independent hotelier, independent hospitality development specialist, and my focus has always been, or always, at least for the past 15 years, on developing new concepts
Yeah.
and bringing them to the world. And I like providing a service that I call from C to C, from conceptualization to communication. If you conceptualize something well, then everything will flow properly out of that. Then you
Yes.
don't have. I see so many properties and colleagues struggling on how to create their message, but it's often because they have a building and then like, okay, what to do now with this building? It's not a hotel yet. But if you
Yes.
first conceptualize your service offering, your experiential offering, and then your transformation offering, and then from that you build a hotel, properties and all your facilities and amenities to fit that, then
Right. As
the
opposed to the other way
global
around.
positioning, exactly, the global positioning and communication will flow out of that. So
That's
I have
brilliant.
kind of built a bit of a name for myself in this part of the world. Not just here. I work with some projects in Norway and United States, where right now where I help the developers or investors figure this early enough before they make too many
DNA.
mistakes.
Help figure out the
Often
DNA of a hotel.
exactly, but before they build it, because
Yes.
often it's almost always they come to me when it's too late. So it's unfortunate, uh, because they usually tend to think that they know because they've
Yes.
traveled, to the best hotels of the world. Like, how difficult can it be? Like, well, if it was that easy, we wouldn't have always the same few brands at the top, and it would be
Yes.
so difficult to come into that playing field if it was if it there was not something. I don't think our industry is not difficult. We are not in space travel, but there are so many levels of complexities
Yeah, and
and
detail, detail.
complications. So that exactly incredible amount of detail. So it's not like you need an incredible logical intelligence to comprehend it, but you
No,
might need
understood.
all the
And
other aspects of the
and
intelligence.
given
And
how
then
global you are and how global your career is, what are the trends that you're seeing? What are the changes we're going to see in luxury travel? Because you're really at the forefront with what you do.
thank you. So again, this is an interesting time because I think we have all the trends out there. So you can pick and choose. Really, a lot of things are happening at the same time. But again, I just want to bring back one thing. Imagine 2019. You have 200 countries in the world. You can travel to 196, let's say. So the whole world is open. Just 5 years
Yep.
ago, you wouldn't travel to South Sudan. You wouldn't travel, like, maybe there was 3 4 countries in the world that you wouldn't travel to. You
Yep.
now check the recommendations of the British Foreign Office or US Department of State, like where how many countries are recommended for travel. It's about 70.
Yes.
So the world has shrunk, and then with that also the trends are changing because they are being pushed from top down. So not sometimes the trends kind of come up from bottom up because of people's interests. Sometimes they go top down. So, for example,
Down.
now the trend that's coming top down because of the climate change is this coolcation. People are trying to avoid Mediterranean in this peak time from 15th of July to 15th of August because it's becoming super hot. So, what I expect is to see our season to become 2 seasons. That we are going to have late spring and early summer, and then we're going to have a break, and then we're going to have a late summer and autumn. But the infrastructure and everything else is not ready there yet. But why would you travel when it's 40 degrees or 42
No.
degrees? It becomes completely. So that's one of the trends that's coming. Another trend that I mentioned, that now the world has become a much smaller place, is that people are really looking again with a sense of urgency to visit certain spots. Whereas maybe in 2017, 18, 19, they were like, you know what? Okay, Venice is too overcrowded. Let's not go to Venice. The life ahead. I have many years to come. I will go to
Yeah.
Venice one day. Right now, people see that there are some countries. For example, this is happening with Japan. I don't know, but Japan is completely overrun. And I,
Yes.
I, I ask people like why it is, and the problem with Japan is that everybody just goes to Tokyo and Kyoto. They don't go to other parts of Japan. So it's like, why is it? Well, we are afraid. What if some type of war or altercation occurs in the between China and Taiwan? Perhaps Japan will
Yes.
not be either a place to travel to, and people start thinking almost like, where is what can happen next to prevent me from going there? So what happens is actually not that the just world has become smaller, but that those top spots have become even more sought after. So
Wow.
that's why the Barcelonas and Amsterdams and Dubrovniks and Venices of the world are overrun, where you can go 30 kilometers out and you will find nobody. So actually, the distribution has gone from kind of like this, it's gone like really, really, really incredible intensity on some of these spots. So that's again, would you call it a trend or just the nature of the current geopolitical situation that we live in, the current climate situation that we live in? I don't know if I would call it trends, but it's definitely pushing people into certain types of travel that are not always super beneficial for those destinations, to be very
Yeah.
honest.
That's really interesting. And what made you go into
So what
the
I
so
do as a transformation, so what I do as a transformation officer, or in different companies, I take different roles depending on what is needed. So whether it's a chief growth and strategy officer or chief transformation officer, I try to either transform the DNA of the company, starting with the culture, or to transform the positioning of the destination globally, which is not easy because sometimes, obviously, it's much easier if you start from scratch. and you just go out there and say, here we are a new place. But if a destination has already been recognized to an extent in certain ways, then to change that perception, I probably there is no better way to illustrate this than Volvo, a car company. I mean,
Yeah,
they have been
Volvo.
trying for the past 30 years to change the perception that they are only good for the young moms, and that a father would buy for a daughter that just started driving, or for families. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the nicest cars out there right now in Europe are Volvos in terms of design, in terms of features. They are tech progressive. So they had at one point actually to build a new brand, Polaris, that is kind of fighting in this segment. Because when you ask people what's the safest car out there, everybody will say Volvo. So it's very hard to change this perception. So it requires
Yes.
a complete transformation. And you have some good examples um, where people have managed to turn things around. For example, New Zealand had this an amazing campaign, right? Pure New Zealand, which literally
Yes.
changed the the I mean what people believed about their own country, which I loved.
Yes.
It's almost like we said, we are the cleanest country in the world. Like, are we? Well, let's become.
Yes. Yeah.
So so, so you can do a lot of these things with I mean, there has to be elements of truth to start with, and then you start building on that.
But really, what you're talking about is the power of marketing.
It's power of marketing, power of storytelling, power of truth, but the way you present it to the world, because as they say, the truth is still the best propaganda. I do believe that sincerely, despite what we are facing with a lot of different information out there. But if you focus on what you're good at, if you focus on what you're distinctly good at, as opposed to always finding something what is unique and something different. It's very difficult to be different. Find something that
Yes.
you're really good at and build on that, build on your strengths, build a good story, find your champions, present it to the world. I'm quite certain that there is a good chance for success there.
Is there a global hotel chain, when you talk about that model, that you think of that is really good and is doing something really well and is walking that path that you describe?
So I used to work for Aman Resorts,
Ah,
and there was the hotel company that was in back in the day in the 90s. So it's a company that was started by Adrian Zeka in 1988 with the first hotel in Phuket, Amampuri, and in the 90s and the 2000s there was a company that was changing the world, coming to a destinations where there was no previous hotels, teaching people everything from the scratch, and just presenting it in the most culturally, naturally immersive way
yes.
before not before, but literally before anybody else. And I used to work in the late 2000s for Aman, and did a couple of hotels around the world. Opened one in Montenegro, Aman Sveti Stefan. I've been to many Aman. So it's really the Aman of 2000s that I think about.
Yeah,
These
interesting. And
days, I
yeah,
mean, there are companies that are forward thinking, but the pressures of the last 5 years have been so immense that perhaps it's not the easiest to position yourself fully into that segment. You have COVID, you have the wars. It's not been easy. And then not just that. Think about our industry. It's been hammered in a PR
oh,
way. Yeah,
I have a
I
luxury
keep saying
hotel
that we lost a
consultant.
PR war.
Yeah, and people don't want to
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
That's one of the biggest problems, is that since everything that happened, it's so hard to retain staff in luxury hotels because, things have changed so much and it was so tough for so many people working in them.
So that's from one side, the labor side, right? But from the
Yes.
other side, we are being told, do not travel. You are destroying the world.
Yeah.
Flight shaming. You had all of this, like, oh yeah, the COVID got spread out by planes and in the hotels. Even though later on it got proven that actually was not the case. It doesn't matter. The story is stuck. So it's an
Yes.
easy villain for some reason. Even though we are, as a travel and tourism industry, we represent about 10% of the global GDP and 11% of the global workforce, which is immense. Somehow it's so easy to pinpoint on the travel and tourism as this global villain of CO2 emissions. And even though you start looking at the numbers and then you kind of start scratching your head, whether you believe that it's whether
Yes.
you believe that the climate change is man-made or whatever, doesn't matter. But when you even if you see statistics, is actually we don't contribute that much to those CO2 emissions compared to the shipping industry, compared to the fashion industry, compared to the retail industry, not to mention
That's
any
right.
energy industry, which is obviously around 30% of the all global emissions. And somehow it's so easy to. So we've lost a PR war. Very difficult to position yourself these days out there because you see, we are probably the only industry that's not allowed to celebrate good numbers because it
Yes.
says, well, we are having good numbers. That means that you are destroying the destination. So it's
Yeah.
a,
Catch 22, isn't it?
yeah,
It's a
so it's a
big
very,
catch 22.
exactly, yeah, very
Yeah.
fine line that we walk.
We're not hearing so much of that out of Southeast Asia or Australia just yet. There's obviously a lot of PR about this in America and in Europe, but we are actually not
Europe,
hearing
Europe.
it much. And in fact, yeah, I mean, and when as journalists, we're all saying not enough is being done in Southeast Asia, but there isn't a lot of kickback yet from the public. I think it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, in
tell me,
Europe, it's huge, especially Northern Europe. All these storylines are leading the press. So
yeah, that's tough after everything. Now there's this.
yes.
I wanted to ask you, it's estimated that 80% of total revenue for luxury hotels comes from online. How is technology changing the travel business and what innovations are you seeing that we're going to see in the future?
Mm. So uh, even if the 80%, whether it's depending, I guess, of the part of the world and the demographic cohorts, whatever the percentage is, even if the bookings are coming online, people inform themselves before
Yeah.
making those bookings and inform themselves by usually talking to other real humans. So I believe that the travel agents will remain as important as ever, even if not even more important, and that people will use that human connection to both understand and learn and select the information. So I'm always maintained as somebody who's very pro tech and tech savvy to an extent.
Yes.
I always maintain that the future is not technological. Every single future was technological from the dawn of human race, but it's emotional. I think despite what we think that the technology still has not replaced much, to be fair. For example, we have great uses for technology, in our revenue management systems.
Yes.
You really can leverage the power of machine learning and kind of crunching big data to give you a suggestion on yielding your rates. So that's a great use
Use of
of these
technology. Yeah.
technologies. Using ChatGPT to write marketing materials, not a great use of the technology. you
They get
know
it wrong.
and
ChatGPT gets so much wrong.
it gets it wrong, but it almost always misses the essence. I'm now
Yes.
starting to see same sentences pop up everywhere. Like I'm
Yes.
almost telling people make an intentional mistake just to prove that you're a human,
Yes.
not a bot.
That's true. That's
You
true.
know. So again,
I'll tell you I'll
amazing
tell you
use
the
of
most popular chat GBT line in luxury hotels is for those who want an elevated luxury experience. That's the line that chat GBT spurts out because I'm seeing it everywhere and it's like, oh my gosh.
yeah. And all of these constructions, not just not just a vacation but an experience, not ju- and I'm
Yes.
seeing these things pop up everywhere. So not a good use of technology. And it's so funny, we tend to jump to use it where we shouldn't. where we kind of don't. So again, there is
Yes.
something with the adjustment adjustment period. I can only assume where we are still learning how to best use it.
Interesting. And what about you? When you travel, do you travel in luxury and where do you like to go?
I like to travel in luxury, um, premium and luxury, yes. And I have been very fortunate. Again, it's so weird, coming from this part of the world where I grew up through the war, to think of myself as so fortunate. The thing is, it's an interesting. A lot of things can happen in a lifetime. So
Yes.
I couldn't travel anywhere. There was no passports. We were not allowed to cross any borders. I mean, from that, I have been to over 100 countries, and then our part of the world has become the safest part of the world. So, and most secure and
Yes.
safest from a war. So it's, yeah. So I like
Crazy.
going and exploring new. I'm right now much be more focused on Central America and South America, because I've lived in Asia, I've lived in China, I've lived in India, and I have explored Southeast Asia very much. In the time when I think it was still less discovered, because I moved first time to China in 2004, so that's 20 years ago, and then I've explored Southeast Asia in the 2007, 8, 9. But and then I've lived in the States, so I know that part of the world rather
Yeah.
well. I studied in upstate New York, and then I worked in all over Europe. So that's fine. And I know quite well Northern Africa. So what I'm missing right now is Sub-Saharan Africa and the Central and South America. So just last winter I was 3 weeks in Costa Rica, and I'm going 3 weeks now in Peru for Christmas. And
Oh,
I really like to immerse myself as much as possible in the environment, in terms of learning and understanding. I mean, I definitely do a lot of prep personally, reading up on history. I like to once I'm there to feel it, that, and then all of those things that you read, and I mean, I'm an avid reader. I devour books. It's almost like things fall into place, because it's
brilliant.
still, when you're reading a book, it's all very much imaginary. But then, as
Yeah,
your
I know what
pyramid
you
of knowledge grows, then obviously it starts becoming. Then you're just missing small pieces. Then anymore, you're
mean.
not
Yes.
starting from an empty board. So obviously, it's much
Yes.
easier now, 30 years later of reading and traveling, to actually come there and see. All right, these are the specifics of this country, of this culture, and obviously all of these things keep changing. I mean, none of this is static, and it shouldn't be. But
Yes.
we all influence each other. With this discussion, I might influence you, and you can influence me, and we don't even understand the the long arc of how, where it can take us. Just sometimes
So
one
true.
information, and sometimes somebody can say. And this is what I like. I like hearing non-scripted.
One of my messages, especially to young people, I have a lot of interns, is just show up. Show up, talk to people, and it can change your life, which is really what you just said.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
I mean, that's what they call, smart luck or serendipity. I mean, you
Yes.
can't expect that, like in the cartoons, that the piano falls on your head. That if you don't go there where somebody is throwing the piano out of the apartment. So, it has, you gotta place yourself in that position where that can happen. Whether it's gonna happen or not, again, that's that part called luck. But the part that's
Yes.
called smart is whether you position yourself to, like you said,
There.
show up, talk, ask, ask good questions, listen, ask stupid questions. It doesn't matter, but
Totally agree.
you allow yourself a
Totally agree.
chance to learn something. And we should tell young people that they are allowed to make mistakes, and that they
Agreed.
should make mistakes, and the earlier they make those mistakes, the better chance of rectifying. I'm not talking here about some super stupid mistakes, but
No,
in
but
terms of communication wise, for example, okay,
absolutely.
you don't always know how to phrase yourself the best. Doesn't matter. Do your best. fine, we'll figure out, we'll assist. So that's
Totally agree. But
yeah.
Zoran, we've run out of time. You are so interesting. You have so
Oh
much
yeah,
to say.
yeah.
We might have to get you on the program again because it's not just a Croatia discussion with you. It's a global discussion really about the future and what's happening. So much of what you've said so interesting. But before you go, we ask everyone
Thank
where to from here. And you can talk about your day ahead or your next holiday, whatever you want to talk about. Where to from here for you, Zoran?
you. Into the into a more mindful existence, hopefully, into existence where people are a bit kinder to each other, and where they will have a more charitable interpretation of each other's actions and words, because we will be wise to remember that we are only main characters in our own movies, and there is about 8 billion movies playing out there right now, and there are many that are much more difficult than ours. And yeah, I think that would be a good way to go from now forward into a bit more mindful existence.
I agree. But how do we get people to do that, do you think? It's not easy.
One by one, one by one. I don't think there will be a sweeping change. Let's promote meditation. Let's promote mindfulness. Let's remove the elements that sometimes from that are a little bit too esoteric for people. So
Yes.
sometimes people don't go down those paths because as soon as you mention meditation, then people talk about crystals and they move into okay, you lose half of the people. Let's
It's
just
true. It's true.
focus on what we can agree on. Yeah, let's focus on what we
Yes.
can agree on. But I think we should all be able to agree to be a bit more kind to each other and to be a bit more charitable in the way we interpret each other's words and deeds, because not
Totally agree.
everybody's out there to get us.
That's right. Zoran, it's been fantastic to speak with you. Thank you for getting up early, for speaking to us from Croatia. Really appreciate it. And namaste to you. I hope that you, are more mindful, and we will spread your mindful message as well. And really looking forward perhaps to speaking to you again. And I'd love to come and see the hotel in the winter. You've inspired me because I'm very focused on wellness.
And perhaps we can do then a next pan or podcast together from here, from the island.
That would be fantastic.
So
That would be. I'll be in Europe in December,
yeah,
so
yeah.
we can talk about it.
Why not? Why not? That would be lovely. Great meeting you.
Absolutely.
A real true
Lovely to
pleasure.
meet you. Thank you. Keep in touch. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Don't forget to subscribe here and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for regular travel updates. You can also hear our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.